I'd like to greet our first and foremost the family of Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, Katrina, uh, uh, and where's Jack? Is he here? All right. And of course, all the grandsons and great grandchildren and great great grandchildren. Senate President Soto, distinguished colleagues, it's good to be back here again, although not in this way, but nonetheless, thank you very much, Mrs. Arroyo. I didn't recognize you, Mrs. President. It is a profound honor to be entrusted by the Enrile family to speak about a man of immense and undeniable historical significance, a giant of Philippine history. With the passing of Juan Ponce Enrile, our nation has lost a statesman of rare endurance and extensive experience, a sharp and disciplined mind, a Harvard-trained lawyer, a builder and breaker of eras, and a figure who left deep marks in the fabric of our national story. For more than 60 years, JPE stood at the very center of Philippine political life. Through the defining years of martial law, the restoration of democracy, his long service at the Senate, and across generations of reform, upheaval, and renewal. They say that the world always steps aside to let any man pass who knows where he's going. Juan Ponce Enrile, or JP, was such a man. He lifted himself by sheer grit. Through his memoir, we learn that having been born out of wedlock, he grew up enduring social discrimination. Classmates mocked him as a bastard, his own words. He thought, yes, I'm a bastard. By accident. But you are all bastards by choice. He was born into deep poverty. He walked barefoot on the streets of Cagayan to stay in school. He worked as a houseboy for his aunts. And at only 17, when the war against the Japanese broke out, he joined the guerrilla resistance. He was captured and imprisoned by the Japanese as the Americans landed in Leyte. After the war, his father finally acknowledged him, and an opportunity for a better education was now available. He excelled academically, graduated cum laude at the Ateneo, became salutatorian of the UP College of Law, and earned his Master's of Laws from Harvard University with specialized training in international law and taxation. Who would have imagined that this boy, born into struggle, exitless poverty, raised without privilege, would grow into one of the most consequential figures in our national life? His rise was not destiny. It was sheer determination. I first met JPE, and I never called him that. I called him sir all the time. Until now, I would be privileged to call him sir. I first met him when I was still a law student in UP, grieving the assassination of my father and seeking justice after years of delay. And I wasn't sure of what reception awaited me. I decided to seek the help of the Secretary of Justice. He welcomed me with empathy, respect, and without condescension. He said, "Which fraternity do you belong to?" Mga tiga-UP, ganyan eh. No. He asked. I said, "I'm an Epsilonian." I replied. He said, "I'm a Sigma Rho." He countered. I said, "Well, I belong to the oldest fraternity in Asia." I said. And he answered, well, President Marcos is in Epsilonian, and he appointed me as one of his principal advisors. To which I replied, but it took a brilliant Epsilonian like President Marcos to appoint a brilliant Sigmaroan. There were no promises that day, only his instruction for the NBI to re-examine my father's case. But before I left his office, his words stayed with me. He said, when you finish law school, come see me and join my office. I was wondering what it was all about, but I never forgot it. I treasured it, in fact. The simple invitation became the foundation of a friendship grounded not in politics, but in humanity and compassion. He stood by me in moments that mattered. When my mother was unjustly arrested during martial law, naglalaruan ng mga politikos sa Zambales, I ran to him. He slammed his desk and said, she was never on the list, and I stressed that to them. That's pure politics. You know what he did? He made me work for it. He told me to go to Camp Olivas in Pampanga, literally in the lion's den, and confront the very formidable General Tomas Diaz, who was a cousin of Congressman Tony Magsaysay Diaz. I was accompanied, of course, by Senator Angara, my insurance. But nonetheless, we got him out. We got my mother out after a not too pleasant argument. Then and there I knew he ensured that he would never help you unless you help yourself, as he did in life. He helped only those willing to fight for what was right. Hindi siya magpapagamit sa'yo. Kailangan ipaglaban mo yung kailangan mong paglaban. We did not always walk the same path. After the killing of my friend and schoolmate, fellow Atenean Evilio Javier, I told him frankly, as I told several allies then, including President Marcos, that I could no longer continue to support the administration. But I wasn't moving parties. He respected my honesty. Years later, when he was detained, I was among the first. We have another picture in the front page. That wasn't the point. I was the first to visit him at his cell in Camp Karingal. Friendship, after all, is measured in adversity. And I was proud to do that. In 1980, when I became mayor of Olongapo, he honored me by coming all the way to Olongapo, and he administered the oath of office upon this representation as mayor of Olongapo. I was 35, he was 56. I then showed him Subic Bay, sharing a vision many thought impossible, a deep water harbor transformed into a future free port. He right away understood its potential instantly. Di kailangan mag-isip, alam niya na kagad kung anong gagawin niya. We disagreed over the removal of the U.S. bases. After all, Central Luzon was going to be severely affected. And after all, we had just been hit by a cataclysmic eruption of Mount Pinatubo the year before. He took the position he believed in the removal of bases, but in 1991, while the Senate was trying to pass on second reading the Bases Conversion Development Act, I and my people and my wife went to Congress and sought him out. He understood us right away, understood the severity of our people's plight. Pinatubo had devastated us. Clark Field was looted. Our economy teetered. I went to him and said, our people's rice bowls, nabasag po lahat yung hapagkainan namin. And they've been broken. We're suffering. Sir, I said, do you remember the vision I shared when you administered my office as mayor of Olongapo? And I said, we must make the free port real. Despite the bill being late in the process, he acted swiftly. He spoke with Senator Shahani, Senator Angara, Senate President Joey Salonga, who finally said, we remove the bases. We must now help the people who bore the cost. Tens of thousands of people from Central Luzon came daily, particularly from Olongapo, to plead. JPE saw them and he felt the struggle. He helped. When the BCDA law passed, along with SBMA, with just a handful of crucial provisions, it changed history. Subic rose, then Clark, and later Cagayan, which he authored, and Zamboanga as free ports. It was an honor for JPE to recognize the role we played in the success of Subic. But the truth is, without JPE, Subic and Clark would not be the success they became. She was one of the few senators who understood what the free port was, competing with Hong Kong and making sure that it was a special customs territory, separate from the country. Our friendship was not defined by agreement, but by honesty. He was direct, blunt, and even if he disagreed, he told you immediately. But when he believed in you, he supported you completely. Huwag kang magugulat. Mukhang leon, pero may pusong mamon. Hahabulin mo lang at palalabasin mo yung tunay na character ni Juan Ponce Enrile. People will debate his legacy. Ganyan tayo mga Pilipino. As they should. Mag-debate na kayo hanggang gusto ninyo. Anyone who stands at the heart of power for decades, nasa gitna siya, tumaya siya, through storms, transitions, and crisis, will face both admiration and severe criticism. JPE lived with contradictions, shouldered impossible expectations, and made decisions others feared to make. Few men have carried such burdens for so long. Ang tindi. Talagang naninindigan. Minumura kaliwat kanan, pero talagang may paninindigan. And one thing I must tell you, he never fled the country. Inaatake siya kaliwat kanan. Hindi siya nagpakita na naka-wheelchair. Hindi siya nagpakita na natatakot. Hindi siya umalis, sinarap niya ang mga nanunuliksa at lumabas yung tunay na pagkatao niya. Yet beyond politics, there were lighter days. Birthdays, celebrations, and long talks about where the Philippines should go. Even after the Senate years, our conversations continued. I don't know if Katrina remembers. She called me one night. Her father was in a condo. In fact, I visited him in the hospital and I asked all the people, parang standing room orchestra yung kanyang hospital room. And I said, lumabas nga kayong lahat dyan. Ako si Dr. Gordon ng Red Cross. Baka makahawa pa kayo dyan at makasama pa kayo. And indeed, they did. This time I went to the condo, and what was he doing? He was in the dark with a little light, he had a computer with a big magnifying glass, and he was reading. Reading was something that he never forsook. And I can tell you, pinagalitan pa ako, nagbabasa ka ba? And I remember some of the books he recommended to me, and I looked for it in my library last night. The Accidental Superpower, America. And he was looking at what was happening in the West Philippine Sea and was, in fact, tutoring me on what was going to happen in the future in this part of the world. Before he passed, and before I do that, I sat beside him somewhere here for a long time. And it never ceased to amaze me what this man was capable of. Yung iba, lumilipad, nakikipag-chismis. This man was memorizing the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Ewan kung maintindihan ni Senator Subirio. Naintindihan niya. No? But believe you me, I read that in Ateneo and pati ako nahilo. Ang haba nun. But he was memorizing it. He was preparing not to be senile, not to be cared for. He was practicing his mind all the time. Pwede nyo may-memory niya. Subukan nyo basahin yung Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Baka dumugo ang ilong ninyo. Before he passed, he said quietly, and I heard this from a friend, if I hurt people along the way, forgive me. I never meant to. And I know he was capable of that. Walang kaduda-duda sa aking kaisipan niya. Those words came from a formidable, sharp-witted man who shaped so much of our political life, one who carried the weight of a lifetime from birth without progeny to struggling for an education and making sure he got his education and used it for his country. He carried the weight of a lifetime spent in the arena, political, moral, and personal. To Christina, Jack, Katrina, and the entire Enrile family, and all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Kate and I extend our deepest sympathies. I honor not only the public figure, but the husband, father, and pillar you knew intimately. To the nation, I say, remember him in full. In my days studying philosophy in my alma mater, I remember what one of our professors would say, reality manifests itself in profiles. Profiles. Ngayong araw na ito makikita mong profile, tomorrow ito, the next day iba. And to the nation, I say remember him in full. Not as a single headline or chapter, but as a man who rose from poverty, navigated impossible paths, wrestled with contradictions, endured controversies, and remained through it all a mind of uncommon brilliance and a spirit of exceptional will. Loved and served his country as he could to the last breath of his body. And I know that for a fact, knowing him. May not agree with it, take my word for it, that was what he is. Our paths did not always align. Pati kami nag-aaway kumisan, but we always end up beautifully. But they converge whenever duty and principle called in. In those moments we found friendship, respect, something that we have lost in this country. Respect. And shared purpose. Again, something that we should remind ourselves of. Shared visions, shared struggles, shared victories. Juan Ponce Enrile lived an extraordinarily long life. Sabi nila 101, sabi ng iba 104. Long in service, long in struggle, long in influence, and long in the memories of our people. Challenges that would have broken lesser men only made him stand firmer. Today I bid farewell to the man I knew as a father, if I may, a mentor, a friend, a fighter, a thinker, and one of the most indomitable forces in our nation's political history. May he rest in the peace he earned across a lifetime of service and sacrifice. I'm sure you'll be happy with him, our Lord in heaven. Thank you all very much.